Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Tuesday, January 26, 2021. Thanks for tuning in tonight, and let's get right into the articles, headlines from around the world on our Grand Solar Minimum news update here. We're going to start in the UK. This happened over the weekend, but it was worth reporting today as well because I don't know about you guys, but your Twitter feeds were full of pictures and videos from the beautiful snow that had fallen over there in the UK, which, let's face it, we haven't seen a lot of snowfall for these folks, and they do love their snow. Well, they finally got some to kind of get a taste of winter. This is their first real shot of, I think, snow weather like widespread like this. But nonetheless, heavy snow has fallen in wide swaths in the UK as rare thundersnow hit the country on Sunday, January 24th. 2021, blanketing roads alongside with loud bangs of thunder and wintry showers. Now, this one user on Twitter says it takes a lot to wake him up, noting how loud the sound was. Another user added, it sounded like thundersnow, but a second there, genuine, I did think apocalypse. Why not? It's 2020. And, of course, the Met Office put out an this is a funny edit error here on Watchers. They put yellow snow and ice warnings. I'm sure they meant yellow snow warnings and ice warnings are in place across the Midlands and the south of England. Portions of Stoke, Nottingham, Manchester, and western parts of Scotland are also covered by the yellow snow alert. And I'm sure they don't mean the yellow snow. I'm sure they mean, it's a yellow snow warning. Anyway, just thought that was funny. Anyway, okay, so in the far north, Scotland, up to 6.7 inches of snow covered the roads, prompting internet users to trend the hashtag Narnia as they shared photos of their snowy neighborhoods. And I'll tell you, like I said, there were a ton of pictures floating around on Twitter all day Sunday and Monday, just beautiful snowfall, and good for them. I have a lot of listeners in the UK, and too many times where I always see the biggest complaint in the chat is basically, where's our snow at? Where's our cold? It's been kind of mild, but now they've seen some colder weather lately, and some light snow has fallen across the Midlands and thunder snow, which frankly, I thought that was just a United States thing, but obviously we can have thunder snow in the UK. Large tornado hits Fultondale, causing significant damage, Alabama. At least one person has been killed and more than 20 injured after a large tornado. That's right. A large tornado ripped through Fultondale, Alabama last night around 22:30 Central Time on January 25th. 2021, causing significant material damage, downing trees. The tornado was described by the National Weather Service as large and extremely dangerous. I saw tons of damage photos today, and the one that sticks out in my head, I don't know if they have the actual photo on this page, but it is a 2x4 coming through the wall, and it landed in a bedroom right in between where two people would be sleeping. And the person had tweeted out, thanks to my weather radio, I was able to leave the room about 10 minutes before this had happened. And it could have caused some serious damage. It could have killed somebody. It could have caused serious injury. Thankfully, those people were able to get out. And, when you live in the South, Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, the Panhandle, you have to have a weather radio. You have to have that backup because even though it's only January, severe weather is still slightly possible at this time of the year as well. So once again, being prepared pays off for this gentleman. Like I said, with his weather radio, they were able to get away from the bedroom before that 2x4 pierced their wall. Now, at least 5 people have been hospitalized with injuries ranging minor to severe. 17 people were reportedly rushed to the hospital. 11 were treated on the scene. First responders urged the public to avoid Fultondale and Centerpoint areas to allow them to safely continue their operations. Back to Fultondale, the following schools are closed also. Fultondale High School, Elementary, Centerpoint High, Irwin Middle, Irwin Intermediate, Centerpoint Elementary, Clay Chalkville Middle School, Bryant Park Elementary, Chalkville Elementary, and Clay Elementary. No classes will be held for either traditional or remote students for that day as well. So yeah, that's January 26th, and we're getting tornadoes already. And in the South, that's not that uncommon. We've reported on tornadoes in January, but still pretty strong, cause lots of damage. I'll be curious to hear what the National Weather Service actually says, the official ranking of this storm. Guys, I mean, F2 at least. With some of this damage that we're looking at here. I mean, that right there, that's almost F3. So we'll keep our eyes open for that part. Deadly flooding and landslides hits Santa Catarina. Geez, Santa Catarina. How about you say that? Yeah. After a half month's worth of rain falls at about 6 hours in Brazil. Flooding and landslides killed at least 2 people in Santa Catarina, Brazil, after 4 inches of rain fell in 6 hours on Sunday, January 25th. So we had the thundersnow in the UK, and then in Brazil we had the deadly landslides here with 4 inches of rain. 4 inches, a month's worth of rain in 6 hours. Well, down here, that's a month's worth here where I live. So according to the Civil Defense, about 3.4 inches of rain fell in a 3-hour period. Up to 4 inches of rain fell in just 6 hours. This was the equivalent to more than half the average rainfall for the state for the month of January, which is 7.6 inches. You guys are like, wow, what is up with all these big snows and these big rains? I'll show you here towards the end here, all right? I'll show you why. I got it coming up at the end, don't worry. All right, so I wanted to discuss, before we get into our local weather forecast, a little bit of climate talk here. And this one, if I had to name this, I would call this segment, You Didn't Do That. And tonight on the segment, You Didn't Do That, I want to talk about Arctic sea ice thickness and low points. Now, what's up with that is has an article here. This is actually from a No Trick Zone. Author Kenneth Richards just posted over here at What's Up With That, which is fine. That's good. A lot of people go to this website, so not everybody knows about No Trick Zone. Actually, I don't know. No Trick Zone might be a little bit bigger just because they have a lot of peer-reviewed papers linked to their page. But this website here, when they're talking about climate, is actually pretty good. But having said that, the other day we've talked about, the Paris Treaty climate and how we're getting back into it. And the basis of this Paris Treaty is that we are putting too much CO2 into the atmosphere, and it is causing global warming, climate change. And today, I wanted to talk about the low points and how we've talked about the Arctic sea ice not having the best of years the last couple of years. But not just now have we seen the levels the way they are, but back in the 1940s. Now, here's a paper about Arctic sea ice thickness, internal variability, and its changes under historical and anthropogenic forcing. In other words, how little effect man actually has. So right now we are experiencing low sea ice, or at least the low points, as equal as to what it was in 1940. Okay, so let's go back and examine a little bit. Back in the 1940s, where are we on the CO2 map in the 1940s? All right, here we are, 1940s, right there. I'm here to tell you that we are at 315 parts per million. Now, the reason why I bring up CO2 is because the AGW crowd, their biggest crutch is that the rise in CO2 and the acceleration of it is the reason why we're having climate change. And this channel's job is to show you that the climate change is natural. It's not man-made. Yeah, we're exposing the other big lie. But no, seriously, 1940, we're looking at 315 parts per million CO2. Now, when you look at the numbers of, and below it is the methane, by the way, which in 1940, the levels were not very high and haven't really increased as much in the coming years. So if the 1940s had CO2 with parts per million at 315 parts per million, CO2 was rather low in that time. In fact, if you get below 180 parts per million, I don't think you can support plant life anymore. So 315 is not that far. So we're looking at CO2 levels rather low in 1940, but yet temperatures were melting Arctic ice in 1940. Now, how many regulations were in place in 1940? How many smokestacks out there had carbon filters in them? How many carbon catching filters? How many companies were going green to keep the CO2 levels down? Do you see where I'm going with this? In 1940, the parts per million in the atmosphere was 315 parts per million, and the Arctic sea ice low points are the same in 1940 as they are now in 2021. Except we are sitting at 416 parts per million. So we are actually up 100 parts per million from 1940 to now. And yet the results are the same as what we saw in 1940. Are you following me here so far? Here is the graph again. Where'd it go? That's not it. This one here. Check it out. Right here is the low point. We're somewhere over in here, equal, once again, same exact low points, except the CO2 is higher now. And AGW is hijacking this natural CO2 increase. I say hijacking it because it's happened before, except CO2 wasn't that high in the 1940s. So you can't blame the rise of CO2 for melt in the Arctic when we had the same exact melt in the Arctic, but the CO2 was 100 parts per million lower. Now, when was the last time that our atmosphere reached 419 parts per million? You ready for this? This guy here states that we haven't seen those types of numbers for between 800,000 and 1 million years. Other records research, though, shows that you have to go back much further in time, well beyond 800,000 years ago, to find an instance where CO2 was sustained at 400 parts per million or greater. 800,000 years ago. Whose private jet was polluting the atmosphere with carbon dioxide, CO2? Whose Range Rover, Hummer, diesel semi-truck, whose trucks were doing all that CO2 damage? Who was doing it 800,000 years ago? What am I trying to say is that there was natural carbon rise 800,000 years. And how do you know this, you say? How do you know this, Jake? Ice cores? I trust the science, the real science. I say the real science because this data is obtained through ancient ice cores, tree rings, ocean floor sediments. That's where the real researchers and lab techs do the work. Think about it, guys. They're admitting in this paper right here, in this article, that we haven't seen CO2 at this level in over 800,000 years. By drilling for ice cores and analyzing the air bubble, scientists have found that at no point during at least the past 800,000 years have atmospheric CO2 levels been as high as they are now. That means in the entire history of human civilization, CO2 levels have never been this high. This is I'm quoting this article here. They're trying to paint the picture here. You don't have to be that bright to understand what this guy is throwing here. Acceleration or not, CO2 does not cause temperature rise. CO2 dissipates into the atmosphere, falls into the ocean. It's a cycle, yes. But the amount of CO2 that man contributes is too small. And the fact that these levels have risen this high, we know that CO2 parts per million has been near 1,000 or higher. And that was obviously before man was even involved. But CO2 is maintained around 220 to 350 for a very, very long time. And I shared this the other night, and I told people, I said, listen, we are alive during a once-in-a-lifetime generational thing. I mean, we are lucky to be alive right now. There's a grand solar minimum happening. You've got all these cycles inside these cycles inside these cycles that are being broken, and there are these one-time cycles. Like, for instance, the Milankovitch cycle. That's a 100,000-year cycle. Obviously, we're in that, but there's so many things that are happening right now that are indicating cooling. And you're saying, well, why don't they just come out and tell us and get prepared? Well, the problem with that is that there's a lot of money out there in the Paris treaties, the Green New Deals. There's a lot of people out there that stand to get rich off of what they think are climate changing jobs. But what they are, folks, is the Green New Deals across the world. It's not about changing the climate. It's about changing the workforce. And that's where the lie is protected bigger than anything. At all costs now is it protected. There's too much money involved. People would probably go to jail if the truth was accepted mainstream. And when I say truth, I mean global cooling and global warming are both natural, and that man does not contribute enough to trigger these events. These things happen in cycles. We've seen carbon dioxide this high before, except we weren't alive. But it's happened. How did it get increased back then? I guess you could say 800,000 years ago, maybe there was a civilization. Who knows? I mean, we haven't found proof of that in fossils or anything, but Still, knowing that, and I just debunked my own theory here of maybe there was mankind civilization. We haven't found fossils of it. We haven't found any kind of inkling of a hint that there could have been ancient civilizations that had machinery and, contributed to polluting the atmosphere. Well, here I'm first to tell you that CO2 is not a pollutant. It is life. And if you want to, those people that call you about the endangered animals, the polar bears are dying because it's getting warmer. I want to tell you guys something. Life thrives in warmer climates. Okay? Just think about that for a minute. Life thrives. All life thrives in warmer climates. But yet, because the temperature is warmer for a couple of months than it usually is, now the polar bears are dying, and we've got to support them. Just 72 cents a day, you too can transport ice to a polar bear who is lacking sea ice. I mean, is that what we're supposed to believe? Come on. Again, I don't mean to have too much opinion over this, but it is obvious. And I'm glad I'm starting to see more. You got to dig for this information. But when you compare things to now and back then, and that we've never seen CO2 this high before, except 800,000 years ago, when it probably happened naturally then, like it's happened naturally now. And I say naturally now because look at all the volcanoes that we have going off all the time. Look at all the fires that we have all the time. That's CO2 coming from burn. That's CO2 coming from volcanoes. The oceans, when they're warm, they emit CO2. That's natural. That's natural. The sun heats the oceans, right? The sun. When there's no ice, the ocean absorbs the sunlight, therefore emitting CO2 that is created by the warmth and the energy from the sun. All right. When you have ice, it reflects back into outer space. TSI is not effective when you have sunlight directly down on ice sheets or snow-covered areas. Bottom line, it's basic science. Basic science is all. So share this with your friends tonight. It's a very important part of this segment tonight is I wanted to show you guys that we've had high CO2 before, and it happened when there was no man whatsoever. Man did not exist. There was no civilization back then. So when you hear that we're at low points right now because of man-made global warming, say, no. 1940s this happened. Were we having global warming then? No. Nobody was talking about global warming or climate change. It wasn't happening. People learned that weather was cyclic. Seasons, every so years, they knew there was a cycle of warm weather and cooler weather. And then they also were taught back in the day about ice ages and solar cycles. Of course, again, that stuff won't get you rich, but going green will. When you buy stocks into certain companies and purchase products for your home that also belong to those green technologies, I'm telling you guys, I'm happy that my channel is on air still, because we definitely don't agree with the so-called consensus, like I tried to point out the other night. And I apologize about the audio on those videos. They had some very interesting stuff to talk about. They were trying to debunk this man-made global blah, blah, blah. All right, let's go to some local weather here before we get to our GFS forecast. I'll show you this real quick. Multiple storms impacting the U.S. with winter weather from coast to coast. We have one storm with heavy snow from the Midwest into the Great Lakes into the Northeast with the wintry mix in the Mid-Atlantic. That's right. That's a lot to say. Another cold system will move through the Four Corners region again with heavy mountain snow. And finally, a major winter storm will strike California with excessive rain and heavy mountain snow. Now, let me talk about the California stuff real quick because that's really important. They are in some drought levels right now. They could see anywhere from 7 to 10 inches of rain over this week. And also, when we're talking about snow levels in the areas of 150 to 760 meters before slowly rising on Wednesday. So those are a lot lower. So we're going to have gusty winds, heavy mountain snow, and then rain 7 to 10 inches in most California coastline areas. but they are not going to rule out the possibility of 20 inches of rain. And there you can see the West Coast is just inundated with snow and rain. Lots of moisture on the West Coast. Right now, we are part of that that northeastern part. Let's see if we can get this updated to the date here. They are still calling for 4 to 8 inches in the area that I live in. Let's take a look at the watch maps. We have winter weather advisories all across parts of New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, parts of northeastern Kentucky, also across Kansas. Nebraska is not in that. I thought they were. Parts of Missouri, into Arizona, New Mexico, and of course all the winter storm warnings and blizzard alerts in California, Washington, and Oregon. So the reason for all of this crazy weather stuff, where do we get off correlating all of these headlines together and topics together? And it's this stuff right here, space weather. Our solar wind speeds are coming in at 521.8 kilometers per second with a density of 7.1. We are still dealing with two sunspots, AR 2797 and AR 2799. Both of them are decaying and moving along. TCI is up just a little bit. Yesterday it was at 514. It's up to 5.20. And yes, you guessed it. We have solar wind speeds that when they affect our magnetic field, you have to imagine the ionosphere gets lit up as well, keeping temperatures a little bit warmer up there in the TCI. Still, this is very cold, folks. KP indice of 2 right now, the 24-hour max of a 4. And cosmic radiation dosage rate is 8.6%, which is still really high, down 0.1% over 7 days. And the reason why that all of these articles correlate is because of these stats that I'm reading to you right now. This is our space weather report. And this will be given after all the articles and weather articles we give you, and will help you understand the science of why these facts right here are important towards the stuff that we read off to you and give you information on. The solar wind speeds increased. Highly charged particles in the atmosphere are bombarding our atmosphere a lot quicker than usual. Moderate solar wind, not so much. So expect that cosmic radiation dosage rate to go up. After the last 2 days, we've seen solar wind speeds clip at a max of 600 kilometers per second. Let's go over to the grandsolarminimum.com real quick and check out a couple of things. The KP indices, we did have a G1, and that was the coronal hole that I talked about a few days ago. It did produce a G1. So I am going to go ahead and tell you right now that this next coronal hole that we have approaching Earth facing, which is this right here, this should be Earth facing in a day or so. So we could be looking at possibly by the 1st, maybe the 30th of January, a G1 storm watch. I'm going to go ahead and call it right now, a G1 storm watch for February 1st with this next coronal hole that will be Earth facing soon. This one's a little bit wider than the one that we just had that created the G1 storm yesterday, just briefly. But with this hole being almost directly head on Earth facing, and will smack our magnetic field pretty direct, we should see a jolt and an increase of solar wind speeds, probably likely around the 600 to 625 kilometers per second range. I'm going to take a stab at this. So let's take a look at the sun afterwards. Guess what? It's quiet. Like super quiet. Yeah, nothing. So after these two sunspots that we're dealing with right now on the sun, that's it. AR 2799 is right there, and then AR 2797 is just about ready to just say goodnight. There is the coronal hole that I think that will cause geomatic storms on the 30th or 1st of February, and then another one right in the same location. So this could affect us as well, and that is at least several days out, 7 to 10, possibly 12 days out before we have to worry about this one. It is barely just now on the eastern limb. So actually, we will see it Earth facing in 7 days. Nothing for sunspots after that. So we could be going blank again on the sun and witnessing a few days without sunspots here over the next several days as solar cycle 25 continues to strengthen, but very, very slowly, folks. And the stuff that I'm showing you right now is proof that we are still in minimum conditions. I mean, when you're in a maximum, this sun, well, you can't even tell the sunspots, guys. I have a hard time. That is the sunspots that we're dealing with right now. That's how big they are. This is solar minimum stuff. So if you're hearing someone else tell you that the sun is on fire and it's awake, no. These stats right here tell you differently. KP indices a bit unsettled just because of the recent solar wind increase from that coronal hole, but they are starting to die down. KP indices are lowering as well. No earthquake activity or volcanic seismic activity is expected at this time of any kind of moderate strength or strong as far as the sun goes. But we will watch this coronal hole here in the next day or so, as that could potentially, just seeing where our KP indices are, if they're low enough, we could be calling out another watch for an earthquake of 6.4 or higher. In the last 2 watches, we've gotten them right, 7.1 and a 7.3. So we're underdoing it a little bit, but usually they're moderate when their coronal holes are this small. So we'll see if this one carries that trend of 7.0 or higher. If so, we're going to have to reevaluate a few things. But we will definitely keep you updated on that. Let's take a look at our GFS report real fast. I wanted to show you guys what's happening right now. Light to moderate snow across New York into the Northeast. This is Wednesday. The stuff winds down. California, there's your atmospheric river of just snow and rain, and you guys are getting bombarded. I need to move that out a little bit there. I remember someone saying the t-shirt gets in the way. So we got Washington, Oregon with snow mainly, but rain along the coastline, and then snow in the upper regions here, Sierras. Again, guys, this is a drought-stricken area up here in the far northern part of California. This moisture is needed big time. Another system trying to get organized across the Midwest, that goes straight out to North Carolina. That's right, North Carolina, Virginia. Watch out, you guys might see some significant snowfall, anywhere from 6 to 8 inches, possibly a foot. But that storm also boogies it on out. High pressure settling in across the La Nina regions, and I mean the Northern Plains, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and the Northeast. Some lake effect snows on Friday, January 29th. That atmospheric river continues for California into the 29th, Friday, before finally moving on across parts of the Four Corner States. And then this next system sets up on the 31st. Moving across the Ohio Valley, chance of snow there before it changes to rain. It's going to be a ridge and fridge. But by the time it reaches here on Monday, February 1st, in the Northeast, the northeastern part of Pennsylvania and beyond, and western New York, most of New York will see snow for almost 24 consecutive hours before this low pressure system finally begins to move north slightly on Wednesday. So this system stalls out, begins its approach to the Northeast on Monday, February 1st. Meanwhile, in the Northwest, you've got tons of moisture coming back into the Pacific Northwest. So early next week, Monday into Tuesday, GFS is now on board with thinking about this is going to be a significant snowfall in the Northeast. And then another system sets up across the Northern Plain states, bringing mainly rain on this one, February 6th. More Arctic air will be in place. There's a possibility that we could see snow develop from that passing front. This is way too far out. I will go with the forecast for the 1st and the 2nd of February, but right now going this far out, what this shows me though, and this is all the way out to February 11th, this shows me that we're going to have a very active February and possibly first half of March. So buckle up, United States. We've got a lot of winter left to go. And why is that? Well, there's plenty of cold that's still going to be pumped in through the north into Canada and reaching the lower 48. Not as much as we're seeing over here in Siberia and Asia. That's where the majority of this cold is locked in at. But we will start to see more of that slowly making its way to the States. Let's take a look here over the next several days. This is the 27th, the 28th. Lots of storm systems moving through across the United States. Lots of cold in place across the Great Lakes and the Northeast. You can see that very, very Arctic air slowly creeping its way down in the Northeast. Temperatures kind of mild through the 11th of February. That's where we could see rain. And then look at this. I know this is hard to see, but we have another big cold front coming. So snow in the beginning of February, cold temperatures, a quick warm-up, and I mean 35, 38 degrees. That's the warm-up. And then we have another swing in cold temperatures that it looks like it's going to be here by the mid-February point. But listen, let's keep it real. Let's stick around to keeping it no past the 2nd of February, because honestly, it's really hard to determine from this far away what we're going to get on the 11th of February. But I will give you guys a quick look at the snowfall from this recent storm today here across New York. Anywhere to 8 inches across the capital region. Same for Pennsylvania and the upper elevations of Virginia and North Carolina as well. Wisconsin, you will see snow in your southeastern regions. Ohio, just a light dusting, 2 to 3 inches across Michigan as well. That's storm number 1. Storm number 2 is this weekend, February 1st through the 4th. I'm sorry, early next week. And we're talking about closer to over a foot from central New York all the way to the capital region. Also parts of the coast, New Hampshire and Maine will see heavy snowfall from that recent system as well. And then the next chance for heavy snowfall, the 6th, will add just a little bit more, but here on the possibility of more heavy snow across the Midwest, Iowa, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Kansas could see an additional snowfall that could bring your totals up to over a foot. So lots of green here. The Northwest, you guys are getting hit right now. And then the Sierras, you see it's in the gray, almost white. That's not snow. That's over 50 inches of snow possible. But we've seen these kinds of totals before, so this is nothing unusual, but still. We're going to be watching the Northeast. It's going to be very active here for the Northern Plains, Great Lakes region. Starting to get a little active here on the East Coast, too. Virginia, North Carolina picking up some snowfall. And I got friends and family in Ohio. Hang in there. I still think you guys got a big one coming here late February, maybe even early March. So, all right, that's going to do it for me tonight, guys. Thanks for tuning in and getting your Grand Solar Minimum news from our channel. We appreciate your support. Please like and share and leave us a comment. Let us know where you're from, what your weather's looking like, and we will try to report on that on the next episode. So until then, guys, we hope everyone stays safe, and we will talk soon. Take care.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All